With Reckon Week 6 in the books and all the carnage swept away and the new rankings in place, it sets the stage for Slaughter Week 7. Find out who Mr. Kilo sees as getting tricked or treated. Back, all you gabbers. Thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Triple Option. Of course, you're gabbing with the one and only Mr. CeeLo. And guys, I must tell you, we are coming up to one of the most exciting weeks in college football. We've got several top 25 matchups and a couple of top 10 matchups yet again, as we saw what Slaughter 6 brought us, as we saw two of the top 10 teams, top 5 teams preseason get locked out of the top 25 altogether. So with that being said, let's jump into it, you guys. I've got a lot to do and a lot to say. Let's start with the group of teams that we already pretty much know who's going to go. And I know a lot of you are going to say, oh, we don't know that. Well, we're going to pretend like we do. Friday night, we got number 24 South Florida against North Texas. Undefeated North Texas, I might add. But I'm going with South Florida because of the level of competition that they have had to deal with. And I feel like ultimately that this team is battle tested and they are not going to play around. They're going to handle it and they're going to do what they need to do, even though Drew Maker has 11 touchdowns and no interceptions on the year. I have a feeling that South Florida defense is going to change that narrative as soon as they get him on the field, and I believe that they're going to take that. They're going to give them the first loss of the season out there in Denton. Then we move down, number 25 Florida State, after their crushing defeat, appear in Tallahassee and host the Pittsburgh Panthers. I truly believe that the Seminoles will bounce back. Despite the feisty defense that the Pittsburgh Panthers will put up, I still don't think it's going to be enough. I think Florida State is able to come out and bounce back and go to 4-2 and stay within playoff contention. Number 4 Ole Miss invites Washington State in. I don't think Washington State will be able to withstand the Oxford crowd. I think Chambliss is able to do what it does. And Lacey will continue to rack up the touchdowns as Ole Miss will make short work of Washington State. I was this close to doing this game, but ultimately with Oklahoma, the balance of this game is going to hang with John Mateer as to whether or not he plays. Now, me personally, I'm going to put it out there. I don't think Mateer needs to play. I don't think this game makes or breaks the Oklahoma Sooners. I think ultimately you've heard a lot of people, including myself, say that I don't think as long as Mateer's not playing, I think they're not going to take so much away from Oklahoma. Now, a lot of people are going to say, that's not fair. Well, we all understand. Until this team loses with Mateer, I'm not saying they can go out there and lose 6 games. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is at this point, if they lose the Red River rivalry, it'll put them down, but it won't put them out by any stretch of the imagination. And they've got a lot of opportunities if they lose this game with Mateer to win, even though I'm still not a believer in Oklahoma. I'm just saying. There's a lot of you that may not agree with me, but I'm not a fan, even with Mateer. I think if Mateer plays and he gets hurt again, there are going to be a lot of people that are going to question Brent Venables. I think they let him sit out, get that extra week of sitting on the bench, and then bring him back. Georgia Tech makes short work of Virginia Tech after that near scare. I think ultimately they realized, look, we can't play around. We got to come out here and we got to take every game seriously. because Georgia Tech's on the path to getting to the ACC championship. They really don't have a lot of obstacles, just a game or two that could put a scare into them. This being one of them. But I look for Tech to handle it and move on to next week. Number 16 Notre Dame faces NC State. Now this game has the makings of a shootout. When you look at Bailey, 1660, 313 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, along with Hollywood Smuggler. Oh, just to let you guys know, this is exclusive on Peacock. So if you guys want to watch Notre Dame's Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and C.J. Carr, along with Hollywood Smuggler for the NC State Wolfpack and Bailey for quarterback of NC State, you got to get Peacock. So, like I heard a guy on a podcast say earlier today, go ahead and download it now, so you don't have to, rush and this, that, and the other when 3:30 comes along. But I take Notre Dame to win big. Number 22 Iowa State, whom just came off of a gut-wrenching defeat last week, the first one, faces Coach Dion and his Colorado Buffaloes. Rocco Beck had a pretty good game, but it just was not enough to secure victory for his Cyclones. So they'll be looking to rebound, even though there are some holes in that Iowa State defense that Colorado may be able to exploit, but there's a lot of holes in Colorado. So I look for this to be a shootout, but I think it's one that Iowa State eventually pulls away from and gets back on track in that very exciting Big 12 race. Then we've got number 12 Tennessee hosting the Arkansas Razorbacks, who are now having to recover from losing their coach, which a lot of people are saying that he stopped playing for. I don't agree with that totally. I just think it was one of those games they felt like, hey, this is a better team, and unfortunately when you do it at home, a lot of people question the coaching and they question the team's ability to play for them, so he ended up being the casualty, and Bobby Petrino takes over. But I'm looking at this game. I don't see Arkansas being able to get enough done. Now, I'm not saying Tennessee is that much better, but I just think ultimately this could be a shootout with Green and Aguilar. I do think Green is the better quarterback of the two. But ultimately, I think Tennessee does enough, and that crowd is loud enough. Now, here's the thing. I think this game's close. I think it's close. Now, I will tell you this. It would not surprise me if I'm looking at the sports tracker about 8 o'clock and I see Arkansas pulled off a win. So I'm not saying they can't get it done. I'm saying if I was a betting man, I'm not picking Arkansas. But it's possible. I wouldn't be surprised to look down in that tracker and they pulled this game out. Now, a lot of you are going to say, well, what about Florida at the 12th man? No. Right now, the only way Florida's in this football game is if they use the different formula than they used against Notre Dame. Because here's the thing. These Florida secondary guys are quick. They're very physical, and they're going to try to get their hands on Craver and Concepcion, which I'm going to be honest with you. If they can do that, Ann's going to be in trouble. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. They're going to get, if they get their hands on them, they're going to be in trouble. But I think Moss is going to be the catalyst here. I think ultimately they're going to be able to run the football, and I think Marcel Reed's going to have to run it a little more than he normally has. And I think that's what the difference is going to be. And then, of course, the 12th man. So, yeah, that's ultimately the to me, the one that separates it all. Then you've got number 9 Texas Tech and against 4-2 Kansas. Now, don't sleep on Jalen Daniels. This is the guy that is thrown 16 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And if you sleep on this team, they will get you, led by Eric Henderson. 28 grabs, 488 yards, and 4 scores. Texas Tech has big play ability. So does Kansas. But I'm ultimately taking Texas Tech because this game is played where? Lubbock. Then you've got a game that I arguably was going to critique, but then I said, let's just go ahead and say what it is. I think Michigan goes into the Coliseum and they get beat. Now, a lot of you say, why don't you explain that? It's your upset special. Well, because who wants to hear about Michigan's boring offense and their defense is not as dominating. And then Jalen Maiava is looking good. He's one of the few quarterbacks that no one's talking to. The guy's almost got 1,600 yards passing in 5 games. throwing for an average of 320 yards a game. So, yeah, 11 touchdowns and 1 interception. So, I get it. Haynes has run for 654 and 8 touchdowns for the Wolverines, but then you got Lemon, who's got 35 grabs, 589 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Got halfway through the year, halfway to 1,000. Unbelievable. So I'm taking USC in the upset, y'all.
You fucking idiot. You son of a bitch. What a dumbass.
Then we got number 11 LSU facing off against 3-2 South Carolina. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm really tired of hearing when is Gus Nussmeier going to come out. When is he going to finally do what he does? And just, both of these quarterbacks, I'm sick and tired of hearing about either one of them coming out. I think LSU wins this game easily because it's at night. South Carolina is suspect, and as much as LSU is, but LSU is a different football team in Death Valley after dark. Then we look at number 18, undefeated BYU, facing off against Noah Fafita and the 4-1 Arizona Cardinals. I don't see this game being one of those games where you're going to be stuck to your seat for very long. Now, I'm not saying Arizona can't play, but I think BYU's defense is just so complicated. And Fafita's, one of those guys that, he doesn't have Tetero and McMillan like he had last season. But he has played explosively well. 13-41, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. But I think ultimately BYU's run game led by Martin at nearly 500 yards, on totally, and 3 scores. You're asking a running game to continuously carry you with a good defense. And this is what I say, good running games, they travel. But ultimately, is BYU going to be able to hold down Fafita and that air attack that they have? I ultimately think this is going to be extremely close. I think the margin is going to be very small. I think BYU wins this game by a field goal. And here we are. We're back at it again. But let us get started, ladies and gentlemen. Let us get started. Now, a lot of you are going to wonder why I led with this one. Well, because, and the one that I'm referring to is the number 1 Ohio State Buckeyes against the Illinois Illini. Now, I'm going to say it from this standpoint. Do I think that the Illinois Illini have enough to win this game? I do. And a lot of people are going to say, well, that 53-point loss that they had. Look, you guys do know that game was played in Bloomington. That is why Indiana did what it did. And there's a lot of you that's going to say, they just don't deserve to be ranked. You might get surprised this weekend because most of you don't take into account home field and what it means. I do. I think ultimately this is a football team in Illinois whom Luke Altmaier is absolutely just rolling. Do you realize this guy, even though they got that loss, he's thrown 12 touchdowns and still no interceptions. He has been sacked 19 times. But the thing about Ohio State, I haven't seen them put a lot of pressure on teams, and that has always been a concern for me. Now, granted, Caden Curry's got 5 sacks, and Arvell Reese have 3 sacks, and they have a combined 14 sacks on the season. I get it, but let's look at the level of competition that they played. I'm still not totally sold on this defense they're going to show me against Illinois that they can get real pressure against a real offensive line. Now, I'm not saying Illinois' offensive line is world beat. I'm not saying that at all. They're going to have to protect Altmaier because they've given up 19. This is a bad matchup as far as in the trenches. So, needless to say, this is going to have to be a situation where Altmaier is going to have to get the ball out of there quick at times just to keep Ohio State off base. Now, a lot of you say this is a team that doesn't get a lot of pressure. It is the competition, people. I don't care how much pressure you get on the team with no pulse. I care about what pressure you get on teams that actually have one. Now, granted, these sacks look good in statistics, but they don't look nearly as impressive when you're playing good quality opponents. They just don't. However, I look at the fact that as many points as they gave up in the game against Indiana, I'm still kind of concerned about Julian Sand because let's keep it in perspective. Is a very, very experienced quarterback that Indiana has on their side. Fernando Mendoza is a very, very seasoned football player. So when I say Julian Sand and what he's capable of doing, I'm not going to say that he's not as dynamic, but when you have Jeremiah Smith, you don't have to be. And I think ultimately when people look at this team and they say, okay, what makes Ohio State scary? And I'm going to be honest with you, it's Jeremiah Smith. You can get so caught up in worrying about this guy that you totally forget that this football team has arguably one of the best number twos who could be a number one on many other teams, and that would be Carnell Tate. So when you start looking at the other elements of this football team, I look at the backups, and this is where the depth comes into play. And you start looking at the guys such as, when you look deep as Zion Grady, and you look at Bo Atkinson as well as Sonny Styles, these are the guys that scare you. Because Ohio State just keeps coming. Now, I will say this, they tackle exceptionally well. But the reality of it is, if Illinois is going to win this football game, they're going to have to not turn the ball over. That is going to be absolutely huge. And they're going to have to score and keep the pressure on this offense for Ohio State. Now, they've got a combined 15 sacks on the team. But here's the thing. Much like Ohio State, I question whom they've played to get these sacks. Neither one of these teams gets a lot of interceptions. Both of these teams have 2 interceptions, but they have a lot of sacks on the season. So I think ultimately it's going to be which one of these teams can get to each other's quarterback. Now, Luke Altmaier, like I said, has not thrown an interception this season, so that's going to be huge to look for. Can the Ohio State Buckeyes force him to turn the ball over? And ultimately, when we watch the Ohio State Buckeyes, can they handle the noise in Champaign? Are they going to be, is Julian Sand going to be able to handle it? Because as of now, he's really only played in one hostile environment, and that was Washington. And he handled it well, but he's thrown 3 interceptions, and he's only been sacked twice. So that's something that needs to be thought of. But ultimately, I'm looking at this game, and part of me is like, I think Illinois gets the upset. But it's real easy to sit here and say Ohio State. But I haven't seen Ohio State play anybody outside of Texas yet. And then there's that 50-point beatdown that Illinois took. But what the heck? Let's go Illinois, baby. Missouri hosts the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all something right now. If y'all letting that 0 in the loss column fool y'all into thinking that Missouri got a shot winning this game, you nuts. I was on the verge of not critiquing this game, but I had to for the simple fact that Ahmad Hardy had, the running back for Missouri, had 730 yards on 103 carries. Basically, he's right at 7 yards a carry. But then again, I also have to look at a very interesting graphic that many people fail to look at when you talk about overinflated football teams and overinflated rankings. And this is a prime example of that right here. And a lot of people that are Missouri fans are not going to like what I'm about to say. But the truth of the matter is, I look at 61-6, 42-31, 52-10, 29-20, and 42-6. I will draw your attention to Central Arkansas, which was 61-6. I will draw attention to University of Louisiana Lafayette, Raging Cajuns, 52-10, and I will also UMass, 42-6. Now, the 42-31 win over Kansas was impressive, and the 29-20 win over South Carolina was impressive. But however, those were all home games. Now, granted, this is a home game as well. But I'm looking at this game and I'm saying, who have you beat impressively? Now, I'm just saying, because needless to say, let's keep it in perspective, y'all. After this game, they go to Auburn, to Vanderbilt, then they have a visit from A&M. Ooh, that's going to be an embarrassment. Then they host Mississippi State after that. Then they go to Norman, and then they go to Fayetteville. Missouri's gonna end up just like they always end up, somewhere around 7-5 or 6-6. So, looking at this game here, I'm only putting it up there just because it was a ranked matchup. I do not see Alabama dropping this game. Just for all intents and purposes, because Missouri has not been battle tested. And everybody's going to say, oh, well, honey, you can't based on that. Oh, yes, I can. And I will. Ahmad Hardy's the only guy that I see, unless Missouri's offensive line can go crazy like Georgia. Bo Pribula is not a guy that I'm afraid of. I'm just not. He's gonna. I believe he's gonna be the difference. He's gonna make mistakes when they have to throw the football. Alabama's gonna commit to stopping Hardy because they're not gonna. They can't afford to give up 230 yards like they did to Georgia. They can't do that. So they're gonna make Missouri one-dimensional, make them throw the football because ultimately, in my opinion, Coleman's a good receiver with 39 catches for 386, but he's only got one touchdown. Against that type of competition, I'm not sold on their passing game. I think you get Jeremy Bernard as well as Ryan Williams that's going to be out there and just absolutely tearing it up. Ty Simpson is the hottest quarterback smoking right now. 111 completions to 158 attempts, 13 scores, 1 interception, and played his butt off against Georgia. Balled out against Vanderbilt. This dude is tearing it up. Now he's become one of the favorites to win the Heisman. But I feel like Alabama's just going to come out there. They're going to impose their will throwing the football. How does that sound like an Alabama team?
Dumb shit! Dumb shit!
However, I think Missouri keeps it close. I think up until the halftime. Up until the half. And then you look at where Alabama's just going to impose their will and suck the life out of Faurot Field. Alabama by 2 scores. Then we go to a game that is just going to be an absolute snooze fest. And the reason why it is going to be a snooze fest, no disrespect, Brad, it's because dadgum Auburn just ain't got a blame quarterback, man. I sat and I watched this team play against Oklahoma, and it was pathetic. And I'm gonna tell you, for a team that absolutely had no quarterback to be in a game with Oklahoma, that's why I said I'm not a big believer in Oklahoma because they were in their building and they struggled with a quarterbackless Auburn team. And I'm just sitting here thinking, why are y'all shooting up this Oklahoma hype? They struggled against a team that really did not have a answer for their running game. Now, don't get me wrong, Auburn kept chipping away until they were able to, make Oklahoma cry uncle, at least for the score. But I'm looking at this Georgia team, and nothing scares me about them. But at the same time, I'm looking at the Auburn unit, and I'm just like Jeremy Cobb, and then I'm like, quarterback, where are you? Quarterback, where are you? And then you get a Deuce Knight, who's the freshman that Notre Dame heavily recruited. I'm looking at him and I'm saying, at what point do we put this guy in? Because I'm going to be honest with you, his season is not far from being over. And I'm talking about Auburn's. Their season is not far from being over, and Deuce Knight being able to take command of this offense. Because let's just look at it from this standpoint. To me, this is that game. Auburn drops this game. Jackson Arnold's done for the season. I'm being honest. People can sit there and say, oh, well, he coach got to play for his career. No, he don't. He ain't going nowhere. Because at the end of the day, Jackson Arnold is a junior that you ultimately did not. You basically took what you could get. Jackson Arnold, I saw him in many of his other past. If I recall correctly, it was Oklahoma. I wasn't sold on him. I'm not sold on him here. To me, he's the weakest link. You can't have that good of a running game, and you cannot have any better quarterback play than what he's bringing to the party. Just can't get me to believe it. And Gunnar Stockton's a guy who has got to figure out what's going on. I mean, people are blaming Mike Bobo, which is somewhat his issues, but I think ultimately Gunnar's not seeing something, or is just not comfortable. And ultimately, the Bulldogs are finally starting to try to commit to the run a little bit better. They've ran it 216 times compared to 132 times throwing it. They've got over 1,000 yards as a team. And needless to say, I honestly think that they better get the passing game going somehow, some way, because they're going to need it if they make the college football playoff. And if they want to make the college football playoff, they better get their passing game shored up. But as for the game, I look at this game being close. But I think ultimately the Jackson Arnold makes a mistake. And it costs them later on. And ultimately, you cannot make a mistake against Georgia. You make a mistake against Georgia, they are going to make you pay. Next, we've got the number 21 Arizona State Sun Devils facing off against the 4-1 Utah Utes. I've got this game as an upset, ladies and gentlemen, and would you guys like to know why? Brad, of course, knows why. Because the Utes are the home team. And they got embarrassed a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, when Texas Tech came to town. They ain't finna let that happen again. They're not going to let two teams walk into their building and take them out. That's just not going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. And the reality of it is, Sam Leavitt has not played up to his potential of last year. Now, a lot of people attribute that to possibly being Cam Scatterbo not being back there. But you've got Jordan Tyson, who's arguably one of the best players in the country. And then you've got Raleek Brown, who's got over 500 yards rushing, 1,000 in 5 games. They've got a very good running game, and Sam Leavitt leads it with his ability to run the football. But Sam Leavitt has struggled throwing the football this season, despite the fact that Jordan Tyson has 39 grabs for 483 yards and 7 scores. Now, the reality of it is when you get a guy that is this kind of a shifty, get-up-and-go type of wide receiver, you got to put other guys on him and make Rocco Beck look elsewhere. And make Sam Leavitt go elsewhere, look elsewhere. And ultimately, do I think that this is what's going to happen in this game against the Utes? Absolutely. I think they're going to slam that door shut. They're going to shut down Brown early downs and then force Sam Leavitt to pick somewhere else to go with the football. And ultimately, this is my upset. It's my upset special. That's why we chose this game. I think ultimately Utah is able to do what they want on defense, and then ultimately the Utes are going to be able to exercise what they have been wanting to exercise all year, which is Devin Dampier being able to throw it down the field. Because surprisingly, as rough a day as he had against Texas Tech, he's still completing 72.5% of his passes, throwing 11 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and has only been sacked 3 times. And if I recall correctly, all 3 of those sacks came against Texas Tech. And they've got 2 really good running backs. Both these backs are over 250 yards rushing. And then, of course, you look at Ryan Davis, his star wide receiver, at 36 grabs, 348 yards, 2 scores, along with Dallin Bentley, his star tight end, at 22 grabs, 246, and 3 touchdowns. Surprisingly, a guy that went to Notre Dame by the name of Tobias Merriweather is on this team. I have yet to see them really target this guy. This guy is a freak of nature. He's 6'5", and runs like a gazelle. So I don't know if he's a guy that they just have out there running all over the field to create space. But I'm not going to lie to you. That's what I would do. But I got Utah in the upset, you guys. And I think Devin Dampier has one of those games that could arguably put him into the Heisman vote. And finally, the game that everybody is talking about outside of the Ohio State game is the Oregon Ducks and the Indiana Hoosiers. Now, many of you can have the chastising nature that Indiana is new to this stage. I don't think Kurt Signeto is a guy that buys into that. He's going to be a guy that's going to tell the whole world that we belong here and we're going to show it to you. Meanwhile, Oregon just keeps going and doing what it does. They don't fall into all that talk. They just do what they do. they don't even have guys that stick out on this roster. You know, you got DeCorian Moore, 19 catches, 296, 2 touchdowns. Malik Benson, he's got 2 touchdowns. Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end, has 3 touchdowns. And you've got Gary Bryant Jr. with 4 touchdowns. And then you go back to the running game. De'Aaron Hill, 270 on the ground, 2 scores. Jaden Lamar, 3 touchdowns. Noah Whittington, 2 touchdowns. And then Dante Moore himself has 122 yards on the ground to go with his 1,210 yards, 14 touchdowns, 1 interception, and 1 sack. To me, this game is going to be won in the trenches. Ultimately, you've got to look at this team of Indiana who can get pressure. They've got 16 total sacks on the season. And ultimately, if they can get pressure with 4 and not have to bring Isaiah Jones or Aiden Fisher on a regular, they'll be fine because you got Tariq Tucker with 3 sacks, Mario Landino with 3 sacks, and Stephen Daly with a sack and a half. I still don't think there's a problem with Indiana sending more than 4 because ultimately what you need to be able to do is confuse Julian Sand. Make him speed up his clock. Do I think they... What you have to do with Indiana is if you're Indiana, you have to be able to speed this Oregon Duck offense up in Dante Moore. Because Dante Moore has only thrown 1 interception all season. You have to be able to confuse him, and you have to be able to get hands on him. We saw what Penn State was able to do. They got hands on him, but he was manipulating. He reminded me a lot of Kyler Murray. He made a lot of swift moves. He was able to get in and out of the pocket and make some plays when the play broke down. But ultimately, this is going to be about Indiana being able to get pressure. I don't think they'll be able to get a lot. I think they get some, but I think Oregon is going to get more pressure because of the crowd noise. It's going to throw off their blocking scheme. And I think ultimately, a team that doesn't get a whole lot of sacks, but they're going to be able to get a lot of turnovers, despite the fact that when you look at Mendoza's resume, he's only thrown 1 interception to 16 touchdowns. But still, I think this is going to be that week. I think this is that week that we look back at Illinois, and even though the turnovers were important, I think important because now you're in a real superpower's backyard. No disrespect to Illinois, but yeah, and this time you're traveling. So, yeah. So I'm taking the Ducks, you guys, to stay unbeaten, and the Indiana Hoosiers unfortunately fall because, simply put, they got to go to the Autzen Zoo, and nobody walks in there and wins. But let me know what you guys think. Leave your comments and predictions down below. I haven't heard from my buddy Brad this week. Go ahead and let me know. Make sure you go and subscribe, click the bell notification, and like the show, you guys. Also, go to the Facebook page of the same name, Gridiron Gab Triple Option, as well as join the group and get caught up in a lot of the things that we discuss on this page. Finally, go to my Instagram at Mr. Celos. And make sure you follow me for all the shenanigans that I will be caught up with on Instagram and throughout the season. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.